Isaac had been a farmer for more than 20 years. His land in Ohio was small, but enough to support his family and raise cattle. He and his wife, Marcy, were proud of the life they had built. It wasn't always easy, but they managed. That is, until his cows began to disappear. It started with just one. Isaac figured it was an accident. Maybe the gate was left open, or a coyote had gotten bold. But after checking the fences and finding no breaks or holes, he grew uneasy. A week later, another cow was gone. This time, there were no signs of struggle, no blood, no broken wood. Just an empty pasture where a cow had stood the day before. Isaac was baffled. He stayed up late, watching from his porch, armed with his shotgun, but nothing happened. Marcy told him to let it go, but Isaac couldn't. Something was wrong. The disappearances continued. One by one, his herd dwindled, and no matter how closely Isaac watched, he saw nothing. Desperate, he set up cameras around the perimeter of his farm, hoping to catch whoever, or whatever, was responsible. The footage he captured was disturbing. The cows stood calmly one moment, grazing as they always did, and in the next instant, they were gone, just vanished into thin air. There was no flash of light, no sound, nothing to explain how they disappeared. Isaac watched the footage over and over, but it made no sense. One night, Isaac decided to patrol the field himself. It was past midnight, and the full moon lit the land in an eerie glow. That's when he saw it. At the far edge of the pasture, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was tall and thin, moving in an unnatural way, like it was gliding rather than walking. Isaac's heart pounded in his chest as he raised his shotgun, shouting for the figure to stop. But it didn't. Instead, it seemed to dissolve into the air, as if it was never there at all. The next morning, another cow was missing. Isaac showed the footage to the local sheriff, but they had no explanation. He tried everything, reinforcing the fences, staying up all night, but nothing worked. His cattle continued to vanish one by one, until he had no choice but to sell the farm and move his family away. Isaac never spoke of what he saw that night again. The new owners of the farm haven't reported any issues, but Isaac knows there was something wrong with that land. He can't explain it, but he can't forget it either. Whatever was taking his cattle wasn't natural, and Isaac was just glad it let him leave. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you've had a spooky experience like this, feel free to share it with me at my email. Tyler and his friends, Sarah, Kyle, and Emily, had heard all the stories about the old Jenkins farm. It was said to be haunted, and people claimed to hear strange noises coming from the giant grain silo late at night. Everyone in Maysville knew the place had a bad reputation, but none of them really believed in ghosts. So, when they decided to sneak onto the property one warm summer evening, it was just for fun. They wanted to prove to themselves and each other that there was nothing to be afraid of. The farm itself was run down, with the house barely standing, its windows shattered and the porch collapsing. But the silo was still intact, towering over the land like a silent, looming figure. As they approached it, Sarah stopped suddenly. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The others fell quiet, listening. At first, there was nothing, just the wind rustling through the grass. Then they heard it, a low, distant wailing, like someone was screaming from inside the silo. "It's probably just the wind," Tyler said, though he didn't sound convinced. But the sound grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't the wind. It was a voice, a scream, echoing inside the towering structure. Against their better judgment, the group moved closer. When they reached the silo, Tyler hesitated. The air around them felt heavy, almost suffocating, but Sarah, determined to prove it was just a prank, grabbed the rusty door handle and pulled it open. The smell hit them first, rotting grain mixed with something far worse. It was overpowering, like death itself had settled in the silo. Inside, it was pitch black, but the screams were louder now, more frantic, more human. The group stepped inside, their phones lighting up the dark, but the space was empty. No one was there, just piles of old grain and dust. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them, trapping them in the darkness. Panic set in as Kyle and Emily pounded on the walls, screaming for help, but no one could hear them. The air inside grew colder, and the screams shifted. They were no longer just distant cries but whispers, voices calling their names. Sarah, Tyler. The whispers echoed, circling them, growing louder. Tyler fumbled with his phone, shining the light on the walls, and that's when they saw it. Names, scratched into the metal, covered in old blood. Names of people who had gone missing over the years. Hours later, the sheriff found them. Only Sarah and Tyler had survived. They were shaking, huddled together, eyes wide with terror. To this day, neither of them talks about what happened inside the silo. But the people of Maysville know better than to go near the Jenkins farm. Dale Larson had always been a no-nonsense kind of guy. He didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or anything supernatural. When he and his wife, Jenny, bought their new farm, they thought they were getting a great deal. Plenty of land, good soil, and a nice house. But it wasn't long before they realized something was off. The first sign was the scarecrow. Dale found it in the barn, covered in dust and cobwebs, as if it had been hidden away for years. It was old, with a burlap sack for a head and mismatched buttons for eyes. It didn't look like much, but Dale figured it would do the job of keeping birds away from his crops, so he set it up in the field. At first, everything seemed normal. The scarecrow stood tall, a silent guardian of the crops. But then strange things started happening. The plants, which had been growing well, began to rot from the inside out. One by one, his fields died, leaving nothing but withered stalks. The animals were next. Dale found his livestock mutilated, first a cow, then the chickens. Something was wrong, but he couldn't explain it. Jenny started having nightmares. She told Dale that the scarecrow was coming to life at night, standing outside their window, watching them with its cold, button eyes. Dale didn't believe her at first. He laughed it off, calling it nonsense. But the nightmares kept coming, and soon Jenny was too scared to sleep. One night, Dale woke up to find Jenny standing at the window, staring out at the field. "It's moving," she whispered. Sure enough, the scarecrow, which had been standing in the middle of the field, was now much closer to the house. The next morning, Dale decided to burn it. He dragged the scarecrow into a fire pit and set it ablaze, watching as the flames consumed it. But as the fire roared, he swore he heard something, like a deep, guttural laugh echoing through the night. The scarecrow was gone, but Dale felt no relief. The following day, the scarecrow was back, standing in the exact same spot in the field, completely untouched by the fire. No matter what Dale did, burn it, bury it, tear it apart, it always returned. And each time, it seemed to move closer to the house. Eventually, Dale and Jenny packed up and left the farm for good. They couldn't take the fear anymore. The land sits empty now, but the scarecrow? It's still there, waiting for the next unfortunate soul to stumble upon it.